Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show. With you, as always, I'm co-manager over at hammerandrails.com, Andrew Ledman.
And I'm Casey. We're here in March, baby. We made it. Bartley.
We did.
Spoiler upload. Rivals Network.
We did make it. It is March 18th, the day we are recording. Casey is currently holed up in Vermont on his way to Providence, Rhode Island, to head to the press conferences, to head to the practices, and ultimately head to Thursday's game at 12:40 Eastern Time between the Purdue Boilermakers and the High Point Panthers, which we learned about on Sunday evening. That is going to be the second half of the podcast. First, let's talk about the bracket in general, where Purdue finds themselves, and what could be ahead for the Boilermakers should they get past those that first round game. So, Casey, obviously we know game one gonna be against High Point. No surprise there, as we've already been studying them for a couple days. It looks like the second round, in order to get to the Sweet 16, could be either Georgia or Clemson for the Boilermakers, and then they win that game. Wait, am I wrong?
Clemson or McNeese State? You said Georgia.
Oh, McNeese. I'm way. I did. I should have known. I should have remembered, because there was that video of the Clemson fans being really scared when they saw McNeese, and then not being worried at all when they saw Purdue as their 4 seed. And that's just not cool, man. It's just not cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because Clemson's head coach Brad Barnwell, but no one cares. Brownell, potential candidate for IU, so he could early learn what it's like to lose at Purdue. You know, that's a big qualification for the job. I think it's a requirement. Will Wade people wanted IU to be into for the job. Will Wade was the coach down at LSU when they got into some little complications.
Complications.
Complications
for
of
legal reasons
and ethical and legal situations. Both, very good coaches.
Sure.
First and foremost, like when you're looking at teams, I think it's a little hard in Purdue's past, because does the upset make the coach, or does the coach make the upset? There's been a lot of those coaches, starting with Chris Beard, who took these small programs, kind of used Purdue to get their name on the mat, and then got bigger jobs. Even though Tobin from Fairleigh Dickinson just got fired in a very strange, uncertain circumstance at Iona.
Yeah. Made the conference championship game.
Yeah.
And then they lost. So he didn't make the tournament, and then he gets fired.
After replacing a Rick Pitino, which big shoes to fill.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I've said this on the State of the Rivalry podcast I do with Dylan Sen. You should just hire Rick Pitino if you're IU. All you need a good season. Above everything else, you need a really good season.
You think you just need one, and then you can kind of springboard to something else? Because,
at some point,
old.
Yeah, at some point. At some point, you need to end your dry spell, Ledman. And you got to stop asking if they're going to be there in 5 years.
Well,
it's a life lesson for you kids.
I think if you hire Rick Pitino, I think a fair question, is he going to be here in 5 years? And I don't just mean as the head coach. How old is Rick Pitino at this point?
He old, but they're rich.
He doesn't look
rich guys.
He doesn't
live forever.
Look good. He doesn't look good.
Ledman, that's rude.
He looks like. I'm just saying, the man does not look like a picture of health. He looks like Skeletor.
Okay. He's got a skincare routine. He's taught.
I guess.
Taught like a tiger.
So regardless, if Purdue were to win their first 2 games, they would be heading back to Indianapolis for the Sweet 16. Rick Pitino, by the way, 72 years old. Not sure how I feel about hiring a 72-year-old coach. But Rick Pitino.
They just hired one who. They just hired an old coach that wasn't good, so you might as well get an old coach that's good.
Yeah, I mean that's the rejoinder. I get that.
You've already got the
Woodson was
wheelchair
certainly
ramp
old.
set up. You've got like the assisted
The
shower room.
shower,
Yeah,
yeah,
like you've already
they
got
got
it set
the
up.
bar on the
Why
shower.
waste that money?
It's
One could
true. Yeah,
say it would be, yeah, like it's going to
they
insult another coach.
they already went through the ADA compliance process. Why
Yeah,
not, use what they've spent? I guess it makes sense.
wheel him in.
Um,
Look, Rick
so,
Pitino knows more ball than like
oh,
anyone. Like
absolutely.
he would absolutely win there. And I think if you're if you're IU and you're already being told no by all the guys that you know would win there, like the guys that aren't 72, at some point you got to swallow your pride and just say, "Oh, okay, we need something."
I mean, you're not wrong. I think if you have the opportunity to hire Rick Pitino, especially now that he's gone through a couple jobs since he needed to rehab his image, you could do much much worse with
You
your
know who's
hire,
not getting left out of the tournament with a questionable resume? Rick
Rick Pitino.
Pitino.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, like he would have whatever UNC magic. Like he would make himself the chair of the committee if that's what needs to happen. What do you think? What do you think the UNC athletic director like said on the table when he like walked out? Was it like a like what threatening?
well,
Just
reports are that he gets a huge bonus for the team making the NCAA tournament, and
yeah,
so maybe just let
money
that be
well
known and be
spent.
like, well, yeah, and be like, hey, I love to take care of my friends. Maybe we should all go to dinner after this,
Hmm.
and just walks out of the room. You guys talk about UNC.
Yeah, I, it, he earned his money
Yeah,
for
and hey,
UNC. I'm not
keep in
sure about
mind.
the committee thing.
Well, I don't think you get paid to be on the committee. I think it's voluntary, but keep
Nothing's
in mind,
voluntary.
keep in mind for legal reasons, this is all conjecture, and we are not accusing him of anything.
What are you, a
So,
lawyer?
just I just want to put that in,
Okay.
so you can't, we're not going to get sued.
Yeah.
No slander for us.
I will say one of the more curious things is how the Big Ten kind of came out in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
Especially the way it just came out, bracket reveals, like you see Wisconsin get put over in Denver, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then the other shoe to really drop was Michigan at a 5.
yeah,
Maryland, I think, caught a 5. And at that point, you're thinking, well, Purdue's got like 11 losses
right.
and finishes losing 6 of 9. These are all things that like you think matter more. So were you surprised to see Purdue at the 4 seed with the chance to go to Indy for the Sweet 16?
Yes. And I was, because as you talked about, as the shoes were dropping, when I saw Michigan was a 5 and Purdue lost twice to Michigan, they had just lost to Michigan. And I'm not saying putting Purdue at a 5 or a 6 was the right decision, but I'm saying the recency bias maybe of the committee was going to kick in. And if you put a team that beat you twice on a 5, I was questioning, and I even tweeted about it. I was like, "Ugh, is this the bad sign for Purdue
Right.
that Michigan is a 5?" Um, and yeah, I mean, being able to be in the Midwest, so you come home to Indianapolis if you get to the Sweet 16, was not something I expected Purdue to be able to do, given how they had stumbled over the back half of the season. But I will say, Matt Painter at his press conference pointed out it shouldn't really matter how you close a season. That's a stupid metric
Right.
because if I play my 10 hardest games at the end of the year and I go 5-5, why would that matter more than if I played my 10 hardest games at the beginning,
Right.
went 5-5, but then won my last 10? I'm still the same team. I just happen to play games in a different order, which is something a team doesn't control. So I thought that was an excellent point that he raised.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I think I saw your tweet and I might have replied to it on the Twitter. Um, I I was curious because I don't think Michigan and Purdue are great like teams to compare to, uh, just because of how light Michigan's non-conference was. And I've seen
For
some
sure.
things
For
where
sure.
like predictive metrics were a big deciding factor. But I think the way teams scheduled and just how loaded their non-conference was, it's the only super logical thing I can come up with for why Purdue would be favored, in particular against like a Michigan team that has two less losses, who has the 2-1 edge on them. It's just when you look, Michigan didn't have a top like 38 win in the non-conference. Didn't have a game against a top 38 team in the non-conference. So I don't really care what you like, because I think their strength of schedule in non-conference was still pretty high in the Big Ten. But Purdue had 4 games against top 20 teams. Like
Yeah.
it's way, way different. So I
I'll,
just think
I'll
that Purdue
although
once
I mean,
again got rewarded for scheduling like absolute crazy people.
yes, for sure. But apparently you don't even have to win the games. You
Right.
just have to schedule them. I mean, North Carolina 1-12 and 1-12 in quad one games versus West Virginia, who I think was far more deserving than IU. Was I think 5-6, I want to say, in quad one opportunities,
Mm,
including winning at Iowa State, winning at Kansas, I think, maybe. Whatever. They had good wins. They beat
mm.
Arizona, I believe. So they had a lot of good wins, but didn't get in. And people kept pointing to, well, the net ranking of UNC and their strength of schedule. It doesn't matter if you lose the games. Like, what are we talking about? It's about the best teams. They might have played a harder schedule than West Virginia. I don't think that's necessarily debatable, but they lost all the games that mattered.
Right. Yeah. I think this year got a little wonky just by how uneven divisions were or conferences.
Yeah,
When
that's true
when
too.
you're putting in that many from the SEC, even the Purdue, like, or even Big Ten, like, I don't feel like the Big Ten was that great, but
I've heard that before. Yeah.
it's it's just so many coming from the SEC and then so few value in what like the ACC had. A strange little
Yeah.
flip, and it makes
Hmm.
it a little tough. Couldn't have worked out much better for Purdue, if you ask me.
Yeah, I
Just
think that's fair.
just in general, just looking out, if they beat High Point, it's Clemson or McNeese State. Two tough matchups, but
It's
not
it's
unwinnable.
just McNeese. It's not McNeese State anymore. It's McNeese. They changed it.
When Ken Palm changes it, I'll change it. Okay. That's all I listen to.
Okay.
And then, like, Houston's a very tough one. Like,
Oh
very good
yeah.
team. They also have to take on a metrically top 10, potentially Gonzaga team in the second round.
Yeah, that'll be tough. I mean, I know
So they,
Gonzaga struggled a little bit, but they have all the tools.
yeah, tough matchup. And if you're Purdue and you're potentially looking at that would be what, a Sweet 16 matchup against
Yeah. Yeah.
Gonzaga?
It would be
If
Sweet
it's
16.
Gonzaga,
Yeah.
a team that Purdue
Right.
has handled in a
Beat in the
tournament
Sweet 16?
last year. Yeah. So, like,
Yeah.
if you're talking about a team like Purdue that this year does need help, last year, the whole thing was I don't really care who's in the bracket because they're a 1 seed and they're better
Right.
than every team
Yeah.
that's going to be in it. This year, not so much. Bonus point. There's another world where Purdue and Tennessee can play again in the Elite Eight. And if Tennessee
I know.
fans lose to
Well,
Purdue one more time, it's
whew,
over for them. Like,
they might just absolutely explode.
they're gonna
Well, and
annex, like they're
the
gonna
crazy
just
thing the crazy thing is Purdue could have the exact same matchups in the
yeah,
Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. We could play Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, then we
yep,
could play Tennessee in the
Tennessee.
Elite Eight. I mean, it would be absolutely crazy. But to your point, yes, if Purdue were to beat Tennessee once again in the postseason, I'm
Mhm.
I'm not sure uh, Tennessee fans can handle it. They've already been obsessed with Purdue
They
since
do
we
not
beat them in the
like
bowl game. And they claim we won. They won that game, even
what
though
started before the bowl
actually
game. because
Well,
it
sure,
was
sure.
it was the Louisville Sweet 16 where Carson Edwards hit the free throw late, the Brian
Yeah.
Klein game. Like there's bad history and bad juju. Like Purdue is a ghost. They are haunting Tennessee.
Yeah, for
Like it,
sure.
and like in all fairness, they've lost. Like I would hate them
Oh,
if
yeah.
tennis like
Flip the
fear
roles.
and
I would
hate and yeah.
hate Tennessee.
Oh my god! Like just Purdue has just been ruthless to Tennessee in dramatic postseason fashion, and they just keep
Yeah.
getting put in the same bracket, and it's
Yeah.
lovely, lovely.
Well, I mean, I just hope by some force of nature we actually get there and get to see that rematch. I mean, if
Elite
we
Eight
see Purdue
in
Tennessee in the Elite Eight
Indianapolis.
in Indianapolis, oh buddy, that would be something. So, uh, do you want to give a prediction of where you think Purdue can go, or do we want to leave that for the end after we talk High Point?
We can we'll talk a little more theoretical. I I feel like they can absolutely end up back in Indianapolis. Like I know Purdue's not been playing great basketball. I know there are areas of concern, but I think they are still absolutely capable of ripping off 2 wins in Providence and heading back to where if it's Houston, I don't feel great. If it's Gonzaga, you feel
Right.
just because you've seen it.
Yeah.
The trouble with a Houston matchup is that's really a team where it's hard to survive with one ball handler because
Yeah.
they pressure and get at you, and like that's probably not a great matchup for Purdue. But I think considering how the season ended and everything else, a trip to the Sweet 16 is the line of success for this team.
I think I agree with you. I am not looking forward to a game in Indianapolis where Purdue has to play Houston. I think that would be an incredibly tough game. I mean, it's not a direct one-to-one comparison, but Purdue, of course, played Alabama earlier in the season. Purdue came away with a victory in that game. But I don't think most people would say if those teams matched up 10 times, Purdue is going to win, 8 of them or 9 of them. That was an incredible game that Purdue played. That was in Mackey Arena. That makes a difference too. And Houston is a very, very good ball club. A lot of talent basically at every position. They're strong, they're fast, they're long, they're athletic. I mean, they're good on offense, they're good on defense. There's not a ton of flaws in that team. That's why they're a 1 seed. And it is not different, I guess, but it is a change from recent years where Purdue was a 1 seed 2 years in a row. And we were the team that people were looking at and saying, oh, how are we going to beat them? What is their flaw? And now, granted, Purdue's still a 4 seed, a very, very good seed. Um, and impressive to get that back to back to back to back years, however many it's in a row now. But when you're a 4 seed, you have some issues, you have some flaws. Teams can exploit those, and a team like Houston is going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think if you pull aside any person that covers Purdue right now, they're going to tell you there's some bad vibes. And there are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like it's one of those things where does that matter on the court? Probably. And if so, like if you see some I guarantee if you do see another Purdue disaster in the tournament, that's going to be the headlines and what everyone's
That's
talking
the
about
story
for the
after.
next
Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah.
copious reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so this is the eighth NCAA tournament in a row where Purdue has been a top 4 seed. It is the
Pretty
longest
good
streak in the nation.
because
Arizona,
2022 didn't happen.
I think you mean 2020,
Whatever. I said, oh yeah,
but yes,
2020.
hey, we have no idea what would have happened. Who
Mm,
knows? Who
yeah,
knows? It's
yeah.
unknowable,
Unknowable.
unknowable.
Didn't happen.
Um, the closest teams below them, Arizona and our very good friends down in Knoxville, Tennessee, each with
Tennessee, what up,
four
volunteer?
four top 4 seeds. So in the
Hmm.
last 4 years, so um, something to think about when you judge not just this season, but the overall strength and success of the program, to continue to get those top four seeds is very impressive. But yeah, I think I'm with you that Purdue has the juice to get to the Sweet 16, and then after that, not that you're necessarily playing with house money, but
You're playing with house money.
you got a hell of a
I
matchup
think
in
it's
front of you
exactly
if it is.
like that metaphor
Go
is
ahead.
exactly right.
All
No,
right.
yeah, it's,
Fine.
yeah.
Fine. So that is what we're looking at as far as Purdue's path, not just to Indianapolis, but maybe all the way to San Antonio. Who knows? We'll see. Gonna take some luck. Uh, so let's take a break. Casey, you can educate us all about High Point when we come back. And we are back. So, Purdue High Point coming up to you on Thursday, 12:40 Eastern Time, Providence, Rhode Island. As we said, Casey will be there to cover everything. But Casey, what
Yo.
can you tell us about the High Point Panthers?
It's a little bit like looking in the mirror of a Purdue team in terms of advanced metrics. Just really good offense. Like, so let's just get the overall Ken Palm efficiency numbers out of the way.
Yeah,
84th for a high major. That's pretty good.
yeah,
And they're the 25th best offense in the country. Really high number for a high conference team. 227th defense, not good.
not great.
I think the caveat that you kind of have to touch is when I don't know if we were doing this in this specific capacity, but when we were talking about Fairleigh Dickinson, third worst defense, I
Yeah,
believe, in the country,
yeah, they were bad.
and they clamped Purdue's offense down.
Yep. That's the exact thing I've been thinking when I see these numbers on KenPom, because I remember talking about FDU and being like, "Oh, yes, they have a good offense. Their offense is highly ranked, but look how bad that defense is.
Yeah.
Purdue will feast, and I don't care if they win, 90 to 82 or 90 to 60, whatever. Purdue will be able to score points on that defense, and that turned out not to be the case."
Um, I do feel this offense is a little, I think it's better suited to what kind of happened in like the Fairleigh Dickinson games and the games prior because they're not, as much as Trey Kaufman has become even more of a focus, it's a moving post game more than just like a
Right.
set up and double and bang. So I think a little bit of that worry comes out when you're, I think it's worth noting just with High Point, they do have one plus defender, Juslin Bodo Bodo.
Yeah,
Cool name.
he's 7 foot.
7 foot, 255 is what they have him listed as. He does
ESPN has him
not
at
look
240.
okay. Ken Pom has him at 255. 240 sounds high compared to how he is, but he is the best offensive rebounder in the country, ninth best
Yikes.
defensive rebounder in the country. Caveats: there are not a ton of 7 footers
Right. He's not running into
athletic
guys his size very often.
in the Big South Conference. The Big South Conference in general is teams above the 200 line for Ken Pom. They are not playing quality opponents. They are coming in on a 14 game win streak. They're not someone that has like a huge, like they didn't go non-conference, like they didn't go play a bunch of high end
Right.
schools and make a bunch of money. They beat North Texas, which is the 72nd team in the country, and they beat 103rd UAB. Those are their best wins. Besides that, everyone else in the conference is pretty much 150 or up.
Yeah.
Does that matter? I don't know. It, I, my head says it matters. When these upsets happen,
Right.
logic doesn't matter. What concerns me, I'm not concerned about their defense like learning how to play all of a sudden and shutting Purdue down. Not my
Okay.
number one concern. My concern is they have a lot of guys that are relentless with the ball. Kezagifa, their leading scorer, is a 6'2 guard who just attacks the rim a lot, draws fouls. Kamani Hamilton is a 6'8" wing who once again just lowers his head, gets to the rim. If you're talking about things that Purdue has struggled this season, it's defense in the paint. It's stopping
Yeah.
penetration. It's staying on the ball. It's stuff Matt Painter has been begging for all season. And it's stuff that Purdue's been good at against bad offenses. Is pretty clear
Give
that
me an
we can call
example
now.
of
The
who
11 out of
has Purdue
12
done a good
game win
job.
streak. So
Sure.
when Purdue won 11 out of 12, they're playing Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Nebraska, Washington, Oregon, Michigan, Indiana, Iowa, USC.
And
Particularly
it
when they started turning the ball over and forcing teams there, like that's against Minnesota, Northwestern, Nebraska. Those are not good offensive teams.
right. And it should be noted when if you want to focus on the numbers of Ken Palm, you said high point is 82.
84th in the
Okay,
country.
84. I know Rutgers is about 8 or 9 spots ahead of them, so they're in the mid 70s, and Minnesota is just a few spots below them. So if you're looking at a comparison as far as the advanced metrics go, where you would put them, they're a little bit worse than Rutgers, a little bit better than Minnesota. Now, Purdue, of course, struggled against Minnesota, but handled Rutgers twice. So I know it's not a one-to-one comparison, different conference, different style of play. But if you're looking at an overall comparison based on the metrics, that's where you would put them.
Yeah. High Point is not a team that's going to like pass the ball around a bunch. So it's not one of those where they're driving, kicking and like forcing rotation, which could be good, but that's also where Purdue gets their turnovers. When they do get them, it's because they're playing passing lanes and they're being smart with their help. High Point wants to get to the rim. Their guys have the ball in their hands and they're going to lower their head and they are going to attack. That's simpler to handle. I think you
Sure,
can definitely
sure.
talk that Purdue has better length. Like High Point's not a big team, their guards aren't big. That helps. But when you're talking about a team that's not been great containing the dribble and doesn't have a back end rim protector, if you're drawing the upset, that's what it looks like. It's a
Yeah.
low scoring game. They're getting to the free throw line. They're getting easy looks while Purdue's offense struggles for
The
whatever reason.
thing, well, it just happens. The
It
thing that
does.
stood out to me looking at High Point was the fact that they are old. They are an old team, and a lot of the guys on there, at least the ones who are going to be huge difference makers, have come down. They've come from one guy came from Texas Tech, one guy came from UTEP. So they're guys who had high major offers and then maybe have moved down a little bit. And I know when Purdue has had some upsets in the NCAA tournament in the past, it seems to be guys who move down and older teams because they're more experienced, they've worked together, they know how the game is played. Maybe some of them in the past had NCAA tournament experience, but the fact that they are older really does give me a little bit of worry. Does that impact your thinking at all?
I think it's one of those things. It's like that's why they're in the tournament because they
Sure.
are
Yeah,
experienced. Like you don't find many low majors that are younger that get there in general. So
probably true.
yes, but at the same time, Purdue has plenty of experience at this point. Like what guard has more high leverage minute experience than Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer? Like those are the guys that's going to have the ball in their hands for Purdue. Those are the guys that have gone through it. Yeah, there's some freshmen around, but like this team has been there for Purdue. I think you just expect the other team to be experienced at this point. And does that help? Absolutely. High Point's never made the NCAA tournament before. This is their first trip to the tournament. That's probably good and bad. They don't really know how overmatched they are or
Right.
not. Like they're gonna get up for the game real easy. I think it's a blessing that Purdue will play at 12:40 in the afternoon, one of the very
In what
first games.
sense?
They don't, very first day of the tournament, there's going to be a ton going on. They're going to wake up and they're going to go get to play basketball.
Sure.
They
Okay.
don't have to think about the game. They don't have to everything else. They're going to be able to get it out of the way early, get the first one out of the way. There is a big weight even last year against the 16 seed that they handled, but like you could kind of tell that they were able to breathe after that game. Like, okay.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
I don't think, as much as they obviously redeemed themselves by getting to the title game last year, I don't think you forget ever that you lost to a 16 seed.
No. No.
So,
No. I
like,
mean that's it. We saw it yesterday. Yesterday was the 2 year anniversary of that game, and it also happened to be the day that their former coach got fired uh, at Iona.
it's
So
weird.
yeah, it was all over my timeline, and everybody was showing clips of the way they beat Purdue, and you're just like, it's so frustrating as a fan and somebody who covers the team to know that that happened, and it's always going to come up. It's always going to come up. It's one of two times it's ever happened, and a lot of the guys on the team were on the team, and they lost that game. I mean, Caleb First was there, Trey Kaufman-Rin was there, Braden Smith was there, Fletcher Lawyer was there. These guys were all on the team when Purdue lost that game, and so they may not have that in the front of their mind, but it's certainly hanging around in the back as they head into March.
Yeah. So, like, get the game out of the way, get a win on your belt, get a sit back. Like, they've been late games. So, like, the game's over and then you go to bed and then you start it all over again. They're going to get a chance to breathe a little bit in the afternoon. Sure, they'll hit film about Clemson or McNeese State. They'll watch the game, everything else. But, like, they're going to be able to do that with some pressure off that they won, that they get to just
Yeah.
get ready for the next basketball game. I think I think when you look at where High Point struggles, they don't defend the pass well. They're not great on rotation, despite like their length isn't crazy everywhere. It's a team that Braden Smith can pick apart. It's a team that Trey Kaufman-Ring can pick apart. They are one of the worst teams at defending in the post. Give up one of the highest shooting percentages. Good sign for Trey. Good sign for that pick and roll offense. And I think for Purdue, getting away from the Big Ten, getting away from teams that know your
Yeah.
stuff, the slog, the style of play. I think this team in particular is going to enjoy that. It's going to be a breath
Yeah,
of
and
fresh air for them.
I know that's something you've pointed out in the past. I think you talked about it last year as well, getting away from the teams that know you front and back and the coaches who see you twice a year and have seen you twice a year for 10 years. So
Yeah.
you may change your identity a little bit, but they still know who you are. Um, you're talking about the High Point defense and where you think Purdue can exploit it. You talked about Braden Smith being able to carve them up. You talked about TKR being able to hit some shots because they have poor post defense. What do you think and what do you see of their defense as far as Purdue's ability to maybe hit some threes? Because it's a big issue in the Purdue fandom that Purdue's not taking enough threes. Purdue is passing up threes that are open, specifically Fletcher Lawyer. I've talked about it on this podcast about how I want him shooting 10 threes a game.
Right.
They got to find him. He's got to be able to take the tough looks. Is there anything in the High Point defense that shows you, hey, Purdue can do some damage from beyond the arc?
Which we should update. Painter provided a little injury update for Fletcher.
Yes, of course.
Didn't practice Monday. Purdue's traveling Tuesday. I assume Tuesday. They might have left Monday. I don't. Whenever they left this week, he expects them to practice Wednesday, and he said he will play. It's a sprain, is the
Yeah.
technical injury.
Yeah, he said the technical term would be a
Right.
sprain or whatever. And I was like,
Yeah, I don't
what
know.
does that mean? I don't
Because
know why he was.
it was a contusion in the sense like he got hit, but like I guess the reciprocal injury of it is a sprain.
Sure.
It'll be interesting to see how that develops. Fletcher is, despite style of play, is very tough. Has never missed a
Yeah.
game. Like played on a bad calf his entire freshman year, pretty much. So yeah, he says he's going to play. I think Purdue is and needs to gear up to be. I think what we've seen through the last few games is Camden Heide at the four is Purdue's best lineup again.
He's looked
It
good.
was
He's
that
looked
way
very
for a
good.
while. Caleb's given some good minutes. And like if Caleb comes out, playing the super physical, go grab every rebound, you need that. But even with him at the five and Heidi at the four, I think Purdue right now just is begging for that spacing and the three
Yeah.
pointers. And I just think it's really hard to play 4-on-5. And they've been doing that a lot because Caleb is just not a threat. Like off ball, he's not a threat. At the rim, he's not much of a threat. So he doesn't create space for TKR. He doesn't create space for Braden Smith. I think it's one of those where maybe you try to stagger it more where first plays at the five by himself when Trey gets
Yeah.
a rest.
When
So
Trey gets a breath.
I just think the highest ceiling, especially when Cam Heide is hitting shots and playing the way he is, I just think you need to embrace that in tournament time because you can't afford a bad 3-minute stretch. Like
Yeah.
that's enough to sink you.
And Heidi is certainly more athletic than Caleb First.
Mhm.
And he's done a great job rebounding the basketball of late. He's really going after it. You saw it in that second half against USC. He really turned it on and went after those boards, and it really helped turn the game around for Purdue. So that kind of energy would be very welcome. But overall, just back all the way up. What is your view of this game, and what are the ways that Purdue wins?
I think Purdue wins regardless. I think Braden Smith and
Okay,
Trey are too good to lose. And I don't, if they don't take this team seriously after what happened 2 years ago, like
right.
that's a damning mark on all of them. They've all
Yeah.
mentioned, like, Painter's mentioned, like, we already have that. Like, we're not going to not take someone seriously because they've already, like, proven what happens when that happens. So like
Hmm.
if Purdue does lose, look, never go after players one on one, never do the like disgusting internet stuff, but as a whole, as a team, like it would be embarrassing. It would be inexcusable. Even though other teams are good, like I get it, like a good energy, effort, well played, serious Purdue team wins this game.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the Big Ten Player of the Year. You've got two Big Ten
Yes.
first team players, a team with two first team All Big Ten players, and one of them happens to be the Big Ten Player of the Year. Should not lose in the first round. No offense to High Point. Again, you and I have looked at them, talked about them, talked about what they're good at. Purdue should not lose to High Point. They just should not. There has been this belief and reputation, I think wrongly attributed to Purdue, that Purdue to uh, loses in the first round or loses to worse seeded teams. Now, when you're a higher seeded team and you don't win the tournament, you're likely going to lose,
Right.
to a team that is worse seeded than you. So sure, if you want to make that argument, but again, as we talked about in the first half, Purdue's been a 4 seed or better 8 tournaments in a row. They did not win the national title any of those 8 tournaments. Odds are they're going to lose to a team that is seeded worse than them. So I think Purdue fans, and I'm certainly guilty of this in a way, put too much stock on what has happened in the past and don't look at this individual game as an individual game. We're scared of St. Peter's shadow. We're scared of FDU's shadow. North Texas, VCU. I could go back and name all these teams. Those don't mean anything. That is in the past, has nothing to do with what is going to happen on Thursday. Purdue should win this game. I mean, the one that this reminds me the most of is back when Purdue played Siena in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Back when
Yep.
Fran McCaffrey was still the coach, and everybody was picking Siena. They were the hot mid-major at the time. Everybody believed in Fran McCaffrey as a coach. I think rightfully so. He's clearly a
Yeah.
good basketball coach, though he did just lose his job. Um,
R.I.P.
but
Fran. I miss him
mm,
already.
well, I'm sure we'll see him. Maybe he could take the IU job. He's got that fire they like. They love a coach who can get kicked out of a basketball game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I remember that one very clearly because Siena was the hot pick at the time. Everybody wanted to choose them. Everybody believed that Purdue was going to go down, but Purdue handled them. It wasn't a problem for Purdue. Purdue made the Sweet 16 that year. And I just feel like the vibes are similar to where they are right now. Everybody is convincing themselves that High Point can win this basketball game, and they certainly could. They certainly could. But will they? I don't believe that they will.
I expect this game to go like Utah State last year.
Oh, that was a beatdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a clear the benches everybody is playing in the
Yeah.
NCAA tournament beatdown.
Look, we are in a state of college basketball where there are no guarantees next season, no matter what
Yeah,
year your players say next to them. If this team does have, I don't, whether it's mental fortitude or like pride or just love for their program and what they've done, like you treat this like it's your final game at Purdue, and you treat every one
yeah,
of them like that. And if Purdue does that, they are good enough to like they should handle High Point, and then it is going to be a really good round of 32 game.
sure.
It's gonna be like it's all set up there, but yeah, that you can't trip up here if you're Purdue. This
No,
can't be it.
I agree.
You
Yeah,
have a once in a generational point guard who is on pace and working towards setting the all-time assist record in college basketball
right. Not just at Purdue, not just in the Big Ten, all of college
all
basketball.
time. And does that weigh on him or the team? I like there's a lot of stuff going on with the way the season ended. Like it wasn't great vibes, it wasn't high energy, it wasn't a bunch of wins, but I also don't think Purdue played terrible up until, late in that Michigan game, which was I think it would do us all well not to react to games played back to back days.
Right, right. That is true too. Yeah, you get
Like,
tired, your legs
yeah,
your legs get tired, you're mentally tired. You wonder what is the point of this game in the Big Ten tournament?
right.
Because sure, you'd love to win it, but is it the most important game you have left? Probably not.
But if Purdue goes out and doesn't win, like obviously there's whatever. But yeah, I expect Purdue to handle. It's not a good defensive team. It's not a team that's been challenged and played like high leverage athletes and blah blah
Right.
blah all the time. So like I expect it to be a not very drama filled afternoon for Purdue fans.
Well, I hope you're right. I think one good thing Purdue could do in this, to your point you kind of just made there, Purdue needs to come out and just punch these guys right in the mouth. These guys have never really been in a real fight. They have not been in a real tough game this year, as you said when you went over their schedule and who they've played. So if you can come out and just jack them right in the face, to start this game, go on like a 12-2 run or immediately just double digit lead, then they're reeling, then they're trying to push, then they're trying to press, and that's when you make mistakes. And I think Purdue can do that. We've seen them do that on opponents this year. And I think if that happens, I believe it would be a much more relaxing afternoon.
Yep. Tournament time, baby.
There you
Games
go.
start tonight.
Does the first four count? Who can say? Uh, I still don't count IU's victory from the first four a couple years ago. They weren't even really in the NCAA tournament at that point. So I just think the first four is just silly. If you want to do the one play-in game for that 16 seed like they used to do, sure. But I here you want to hear my conspiracy theory?
Okay.
All right, my conspiracy theory is this. The NCAA desperately wants to expand the NCAA tournament. It's their
Correct.
most popular postseason. They get millions upon
Correct.
billions of dollars for the
Hmm.
advertising, the TV revenue. Someone at the NCAA told the North Carolina guy and the committee, hey, put North Carolina in, leave out a couple teams on the bubble. It's gonna make people angry. It will be
Oh,
a step. It
okay.
will be a step toward expanding from 68 to whatever they wanted to
So a
do
win-win.
next
You
time.
get you get
Exactly.
your non-deserving Tar Heels in, and we get more teams next year.
Yep. Because then they'll
Okay.
say, oh, well, if we only had 76 teams, these guys would have gotten in. And then the
Okay.
ball starts rolling because you get more disenchanted fan bases. That's my conspiracy theory. Do I think it's true?
You've set the
Maybe
dogs off,
1%.
Ledman.
Good. I think there's
Conspiracy dogs
1% of
are
me that thinks
howling.
there you go. And I think that's a sign we should end before we get the tinfoil hats out. So, for Casey and myself, folks, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Till next time.